Hey, what's going on, GameLeapers? This is Coach Eeks, and in today's video, we're going to be rattling through the 3 best champions for each role in patch 12.9, which will be hitting the Rift early next week. So to know who the champions you should pick for free LP in the near future, make sure you stick around for the whole video. And as always, guys, if you want to master any of the champions in this video or any of the roles, make sure you check out the GameLeap website linked in the description and comment section, because our videos on our website, thousands of our subscribers have access to them, and that's because they are made by challengers to help you become a challenger yourself. We have so many champion courses and guides, we have so many high elo font analyses where we're going to point out what the best players in the world do that you have to do as well. So make sure you check out those links down below, and let's get into the video. Now we're going to start in the support role here and talk about the 3 best carry champions for support in 12.9. Now coming in at number 3, we have Nami, and Nami is on here for a very specific reason. So if I was to ask you who the best AD carry is at the moment, I'm sure we can all agree that Lucian is the number 1. So if Lucian is the number 1, does this make Nami viable? Well, of course, right? Because of how the electrocute tech works when Nami and Lucian are paired together. Now, of course, you can win games with other AD carries, in particular with something like a Draven, but Lucian Nami, this is the tech of the moment, and if you can pick Nami with a Lucian in your games regardless of the elo, you have a much better chance of winning. So Nami is the 3rd best support. Now, beating her to number 2 is a champion who you can pick in probably more games, and this is Blitzcrank. So if you don't want to play Nami because you might not have a Lucian on your team, for example, well then Blitzcrank is going to be a great alternative. Because you have so much pressure in the lane with your rocket grab, he does very well against the popular supports, so all of those enchantresses you see, so Sona, Soraka, Nami, who we just mentioned, Blitzcrank can absolutely crush these. He's also a very good roamer, so you can roam around the map and you can actually 1v9 from the support role as well as anyone. So Blitzcrank number 2, but he is beaten to number 1 by a champion who's really been outperforming everyone ever since Riot put a 20% slow in your queue, and this of course is Senna. And even though Senna, you might not have the power in the laning phase like a Blitzcrank, it's just the fact you scale so well, and like I said, the 20% Q slow, it's so powerful. Even with a champion like Lucian, you might think, oh my god, Lucian, you need a CC support, or you might need an enchantress like a Nami or a Janna with the shields to empower you. But think about it, Senna will also proc Lucian's vigilance passive, so this is a really underrated combination, and in lower elos in particular, Senna does really well because you're going to have time to scale in most of them, but she is the number 1 support. Now we're going to stay in the bot lane and talk about the 3 best AD carries for 12.9, and coming in at number 3 we have Jhin, and because of those buffs last patch to your W and your E, I mean in my opinion, let me put it this way, I don't think Jhin is really that great, but the stats in most elos, so around from Iron to around Platinum, maybe Diamond elo, Jin's actually doing very well. So for sure, the buffs have helped, and Jhin being a long range safe AD carry, in most games you're going to have an impact, you're going to get your item spikes, but the issue for Jhin is that he's not really the powerhouse he once was, so you're allowing lots of scaling AD carries, if you do blind pick Jhin, to be picked against you. So something like a Kai'Sa, something like a Vayne, they do very well into Jhin, and you can't really do anything to stop them because you don't have the same power. You have more utility because of your Deadly Flourish route lasting a little bit longer, but that's really about it. But still, all the stat websites are telling me that Jhin is doing well, so he has to be on the countdown. Now beating him to number 2 is a champion who I really believe is good, and this is Vayne. But like Jhin, I think you have to pick Vayne in the right situation. So if you know the enemy AD carry has locked in something like an Ezreal, they've locked in Jhin, you can just scale for free against them. Because the issue for Vayne is if you blind pick her, you do have to go up against a lot of champions who might counter you. So Caitlyn, obviously, because of her range. Maybe you run into a Draven, who won't let you scale, and you will be in danger of being 0-5 at 5 minutes. So it is a little risky, but the great thing about Vayne is how she works with lethal tempo, the extra range, the extra attack speed. But if you do pick her, guys, try to pick her in the right situation. But Vayne number 2. Now beating Vayne and beating Jhin to number 1 for the AD carries in 12.9, this is none other than Lucian, and because of the extra scaling Lucian has in his vigilance passive and his attack damage per level, this makes him so much better, like a more rounded AD carry if you will, because he was more skewed towards the early game, and he kind of still is, but the fact your scaling is better, if you get a lead in the early game, it's over. You will hit so hard, you will one-shot everyone, but I'm going to recommend all of you guys out there, if you're going to play Lucian, to go Kraken Slayer, because the Gale Force nerf is to 110 seconds, the active that is. Lucian, you have an innate dash, so you don't need to rely on this as much as a Jhin, as much as a Caitlyn, an AD carry like this. And Kraken Slayer, the 3rd attack, how the passive works really well with your 2-shot passive, so you can get way more Kraken Slayer procs off than any other AD carry. So Lucian is number 1. Now moving on here, guys, to the mid lane, and coming in at number 3 is a champion who's actually getting nerfed in 12.9, this being Ahri. So your charm, the cooldown is going up, and your Spirit Rush's cooldown is also going up. Now during the early to mid game, this will actually have an impact. You're not going to throw as many spells out, but the thing is for Ahri, you still pack a really big punch, you still have a lot of kill pressure, pressure, wave clear, mobility, and once you do get your Everfrost, you have all the utility in the world to set up kills for your teammates. So you can play Ahri like an assassin, you can be really aggressive with Sorcerer Shoes, Luden's Tempest, trying to one-shot everyone. Or, what I think is the better route, is to go Everfrost with Sorcerer Shoes still, but you're trying to work with the Glaciate route to enable you to land your charm, to enable you to land your full combo, and of course your teammates to land their stuff. So Ahri, despite these nerfs, will still be very good. Honestly, the best blind pickable mid laner because there are no real hard counters, so she's number 3. Now beating her to number 2 is a champion who got buffed a couple of patches ago, this being Yasuo, so the base HP going up, and also his ultimate's cooldown in the early game going down. For a champion who is more mid to late game skewed, kind of like the opposite to Lucian, these early game buffs definitely mean something, and this is why this champion in high relos anyway has close to a 55% win rate in the mid lane. Even in lower elos it's around 51%, still really good, and this champion is meant to be hard to play. Well, maybe not hard to play, but he should have a high skill ceiling, kind of like the Riven thing at the moment. You don't have to be in a practice tool for 10 hours a day before you play a ranked game to play this champion and win. That's because he's just so broken. So Yasuo is number 2. But beating both Yasuo and Ahri to number 1 for the mid laners for 12.9, this is Veigar. And ever since Riot buffed his Q where it's going to give you more stacks, it's really pushed Veigar right to the top. And even though he got nerfed in terms of the bot lane, so his armor, so he's a little squishier, it really hasn't deterred him from the mid lane. By taking Predator with Ingenious Hunter and then getting Everfrost, it is a deadly combination because you have so much damage anyway because of your Q stacking, but you have so much utility. By maxing your event horizon second as well, this will get it down to a very low cooldown, so you can get multiple cages off during fights. And if any of you have played against a Veigar with this setup, you will know exactly what I'm talking about. It's very obnoxious, and even if you do beat him during the laning phase, which you probably should do, he can still come back easily and win games. So Veigar is the number 1 mid laner for another patch. Now let's head to the jungle and talk about the 3 best junglers for 12.9. The first of these being Nocturne. And for Nocturne, ever since Riot buffed your Q's AD ratio, you've become a much better champion. Now whether you decide to take Lethal Tempo or Conqueror, it doesn't really matter. As long as you're taking Ultimate Hunter to reduce your paranoia cooldown, Nocturne can be a very scary, literally, jungler. But just be aware that if you are going to play Nocturne and you're going to full clear your camp so you hit level 4 at the end of Krugs or Gromp, make sure to put 2 points into your Q at level 3. Then you can skill your E and then you're looking to make plays. But just another tip as well, if you are very close to hitting level 6, try to just do 1 camp and then use your ultimate. We want to get as many paranoias off as possible. So don't just hit level 6 and then power farm for the next 2 minutes. Hit level 6 and bang, get yourself on the map. Now another champion who would do well to follow this philosophy, I guess, this is Kha'Zix coming in at number 2. And for Bugsplat with First Strike with Treasure Hunter, amazing jungler. One of the best 1v9ers in the game. The only bad thing about Kha'Zix is your early game. So if you're against an aggressive early game jungler, and if the enemy mid laner is playing a very dominant early game champion, so you're not going to have priority in the mid lane, it can be quite oppressive, especially if you get invaded. You can't really fight back all that much, so do be careful against champions like Graves, Nidalee, Trundle, these type of champions. So I would recommend warding your second buff so that doesn't happen, so you can get to level 3 free of charge, and that's pretty much all you have to do. But the number 1 jungler, to be honest, is just Nocturne, but on steroids, and this is Rengar. So kind of the same thing, right? We want to hit level 6, and then we want to make plays around the map. But as Rengar, a bit different to Nocturne, because you will be building pretty much just purely damage, and because your Q is now critically striking, because your stacks now last longer, you can punish the enemy champion's mistakes a lot harder, because you can just do everything on your own. For Nocturne, of course, you can still kill the enemy AD carry and 1v1 them, but you don't have the damage a Rengar has, and it's much easier peeling off a Nocturne rather than the new and improved Rengar. And even though your W, the damage you're dealing to monsters, might be getting reverted, does this really matter? No, of course not. So Rengar holds the number 1 position in the jungle for 12.9 as well. Now the last role, guys, of course, this is the top lane, and the 3 champions, well, unfortunately, for those of us who are fans of diversity, these are all pretty similar champions, but that's just the way it is, guys. So coming in at number 3, we have Camille. And for all of these champions since 12.3, where the bruiser and fighter items got changed, for Camille, it's better to be honest, because Ravenous Hydra, giving you extra attack damage for the same amount of gold, Morimel Mortius being an option, Death's Dance being an option, these items are just improved for these type of champions. And let's face it, playing against a Camille, when do they not pop off? Even if they're 1-5, they're still going to take half of your HP if you're an AD carry or a mid laner, and God help you, if they do get ahead, the game is all but over, because they have so much lockdown, so much mobility. So Camille at number 3. But beating her to number 2, a champion who would do very well against Camille, this is Fiora. And just like I said for Camille, from 12.3 onwards, Fiora has just been better, and that's because Ravenous Hydra like Camille, the attack damage going up. If you think about Death's Dance or Morimel Mortius, exactly the same. The attack damage, the ability haste in Death's Dance, the healing passive scaling off your AD, this is just a gold mine for a champion like Fiora. In the top lane as well, she's running one of the most banned champions in a lot of elos. And you know why? That's because she does so well into so many champions. And a bit like Camille, even if you do beat her in the early game, her scaling is insane. So Fiora is number 2, but they are beaten to number 1. And can anyone contest this? Because guys, I will be amazed if you can argue in the comment section why Riven should not be the number 1 top laner for another patch in season 12, then I don't know, I'll give you a free session or something, because this champion heads and shoulders above even champions like Fiora and Camille. It's just way too good. And she's a bit like Yasuo, because Riven is meant to have a high skill ceiling, but you can first timer and probably have a better chance of winning than playing one of your main champions. She is just that damn good. The buff to her E not so long ago, so it's on a 2-second lower cooldown. The buff to the items in 12.3. Gore drinking more AD, death stands, blocking magic damage as well, and the healing passive, like I said for Fiora, scaling off your attack damage. Then we also have more Malmortius, more AD, more ability haste, Black Cleaver doing exactly the same. These stats define Riven: attack damage, ability haste. So those were the top 3 top laners, guys, for 12.9, and those were of course the 3 most broken champions for each role for next patch. Let me know in the comment section if you agree, disagree, think another champion should have been included. Let me know. I'd love to hear your thoughts. But until tomorrow's video, this has been Coach Cheeks. Please remember to like this video if you did enjoy it, and until then, bye.